This is Sundown Town Duty Station, the second Jon and Teresa Zachery story. Written by J.J. Zerr. Narrated by Mark Williams. Author's note: this is a work of fiction. However, some of the incidents in the story were used as a historical setting for the story. Sources of these incidents were the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the Meridian Star, and online sources of stories reporting on stories set in Jackson and Biloxi, Mississippi. The characters are all fictional and a product of the author's imagination. On the language used in the book, most of us, I think, will find some of the language deeply offensive. I did not believe I could tell this story without using the language that people used at that time and in that place. That's why it's included in the story. The story isn't true without it. The title. When I was finishing the book, I took a handful of candidate titles to my writing critique group. One of the candidates was Sundown Town Duty Station. Several of my fellow writers did not know what a sundown town was. That clinched it for me. It was my hope that people who saw my book and likewise did not know what the title meant, and some of them would look it up. The key message is that the treatment of black people in the South was generally terrible. But sundown towns and awful treatment for a segment of our national population was not exclusive to the South. We had sundown towns from coast to coast. Chapter 1. Not many things, aside from the baby crying, rousted Teresa Zachery out of bed before 0700. That morning, List Almighty would determine their future, and her husband Jon could get a permanent bridge to replace his 2 upper front false teeth. She slid her feet into her bunny slippers and padded across the living-room carpet to the kitchen. Jon stood at the sink, water running, and Teresa stopped to watch from the doorway. It wasn't spying. It was more like when she discovered 2-year-old Jennifer deeply engrossed in her coloring book, one of those precious and rare motherhood moments. She frowned. Watching her husband felt like spying. Jon turned off the faucet, shook the water from what he was fond of calling his falsies, put them in, and looked down at the front of his navy uniform shirt. She smiled as he ran through his get-ready-for-work routine. Teeth in.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?